Peace and soul, everyone. Welcome back to Architects of Soul. I'm Max Soul.
And I'm Mello Soul. Today we're stepping into the Uptown side of the building.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're talking about an artist who brought a level of mathematical precision and high fashion elegance to soul music.
And she was certainly elegant. We're talking about the one and the only Ms. Dionne Warwick. Now, most people hear soul and they think of the grit, the sweat, and the shouting. But Dionne, well, she was the architect of sophistication.
Exactly. She proved that soul didn't have to stay in one lane. She took that gospel foundation from East Orange, New Jersey, and used it to navigate the most complex melodies ever written.
Exactly, Mello. Dionne Warwick didn't just catch the singing bug. She was born into a gospel dynasty where music was the air that she breathed. And Dionne, well, she credits her grandfather, the minister at St. Mark's Methodist Church in East Orange, New Jersey, as the first person to notice the gift when she was 6. And she performed her very first solo, which was a gospel hymn, at his church.
Oh, yeah, and he remained her biggest fan, Max, and the architect of her early confidence. Not that Dionne didn't have to look far for inspiration.
No, not really.
She was surrounded by the Drinkard Singers, an esteemed family gospel group that included her mother, Lee, her aunts, and her uncles.
And as a teenager, she took her place in that family tradition by forming the Gospel Airs with her sister Dee Dee and her aunt Sissy Houston, the mother of Whitney Houston, who we talked about on Gladys Knight just recently. And the group was so talented that they moved beyond the church walls and they won the amateur night at the Apollo Theater. And eventually, they became one of the most sought-after background vocal groups in New York.
Yes, Max, they were killing it everywhere. And while Dionne had been singing her whole life, she didn't view it as a professional career until she was 18 and attending the Hart College of Music. She said, "I was studying music education, but I wanted to be a teacher."
Yeah, but while doing session work in New York to play for school, Mello, well, she met a young composer named Bacharach during a recording session while she was singing background for the Drifters. And he heard her voice and immediately asked her to sing on his demos. And that bug for the teacher's podium was quickly replaced by the architecture of the recording studio.
Yeah, and for every artist out there today, whether you're producing in your bedroom or hitting a major studio, Dionne's journey is a lesson in discipline. She wasn't just a singer, she was a student of the game. So let's get into the blueprint.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, it took roughly 1 year from the moment they met for Dionne to step out from the background and launch her solo career. It's a classic architect story, which is a mix of luck, a legendary argument, and a typo that changed history.
You bet, Mello. So set the scene, it's summer of 61. And Dionne was working as a background session singer, as we said before, on the Drifters, singing on Mexican Divorce. So Burt Bacharach, who was directing the session, was immediately struck by Dionne's pigtails and jeans. The look was great, but more importantly, what he heard was her special voice. Mm-hmm. So Bacharach and David were like, wow, this girl's great. So they hired her to sing the demos for their songs that they intended to give to other artists. And immediately Dionne was effectively now the lab assistant for their architectural experiments. What a great formula. From 1961 into 1962, late 1962, she sang for them. And then she found this song that she loved called Make It Easy on Yourself. But they gave it to Jerry Butler, and she felt totally betrayed. So she snapped at Burt and Hal, and she screamed, "Don't make me over." And you know what, Mello? That self-advocacy is what saved her career.
Oh, yes, Max. Essentially saying, don't try to change me or lie to me. Instead of getting angry, though, Burt and Hal realized that her outburst was the perfect song title. They wrote Don't Make Me Over specifically for her.
Quick hit.
It was released in late 1962 as her first solo single. And as things always seem to happen,
don't they?
When that first single was pressed, her last name, which is actually Warwick, was misspelled as Warwick.
But being the pragmatist that Dionne Warwick was, well, she decided not to fight it and kept it. So she kept the misprinted name, and in 1963, she was a top 20 solo star. How about that? Mm-hmm. So out on the road she goes, just like any other artist trying to get their records heard and their music known. And so Dionne is out on tour with Sam Cooke.
Yeah, and of course, Max, they're down south in the 60s, which means the Jim Crow was in full bloom.
Oh, it sure was.
Dionne and a friend went into a diner to order food. The waitress was incredibly rude and made it clear that they were not welcome.
You think?
Dionne, never one to hold her tongue,
no,
told the woman exactly where she could stick that food and walked out.
And maybe in New York that had worked, Mello, but down south at that
they weren't
time,
playing that.
Oh, no. So a few minutes after they got back on the tour bus, well, guess what? A police officer boarded and demanded to know who those two girls were. Well, talk about a mic drop moment. I mean, for real. Sam Cooke, though, the hero that he was, he stood up and he intercepted the officer and he told him firmly, "Sir, there are no gals on this bus. We have ladies and gentlemen, and this happens to be a private bus that belongs to me." And then he says, "I'm going to ask you very nicely to please leave."
And amazingly, Max, that officer backed down and
Amazing.
left.
It is amazing.
Sam Cooke turned to Dionne and jokingly scolded her about the publicity that she almost caused.
The train wreck, you mean?
Yeah. But he clearly had her back, though, and this heavily influenced Dionne's own policy of refusing to play to segregated audiences.
And she learned the ropes really early on, Mello, because she's performing on the Chitlin circuit, where she had to deal with segregated bathrooms, hotels, and theaters. And she found the practice stupid and dehumanizing. Certainly as she gained more leverage as a star, and like many of her contemporaries, including the Beatles and Sam Cooke, well, she began to push for non-segregated clauses in her contracts.
Dionne has said she wasn't necessarily a marcher in the traditional sense, but she was a doer.
Hell yeah.
Her way of fighting was through her presence and her refusal to acknowledge the rules of segregation when she encountered them, like breaking barriers through pop by being one of the first black female artists to be played on white pop radio stations consistently.
It's true. And in 1969, she was the first African-American woman to win a Grammy in a pop category for singing Do You Know the Way to San Jose, which apparently she couldn't care less about. But getting a Grammy, that she cared about. And that Grammy at the time was almost exclusively reserved for white artists, won by a black woman. Can you imagine that, Mello? By simply being a crossover star, she forced integrated audiences to sit in the same rooms and listen to the same music, which was a subtle but powerful form of activism in the 60s. You go, girl.
And when we come back from break, we'll talk more about Dionne's early success and about the triangle marriage between her, Bert, and Hal David.
That's right. You're listening to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul, and we will be right back.
Sit tight, y'all. And we're back. Before we dive deep, if you like this content, please give a like and subscribe to our channel.
We'd really appreciate it.
And remember, there's a video version on our YouTube page if you feel like watching the vibe instead of just listening.
And if you want, while you're there on the page, check out our music. You're listening to it when you listen to the show. All right, Mel, let's get back to the classroom and talk about Dionne and one of my favorite stories. And this is that she took her legal pad into clubs to watch the bigs of the time.
That's the architect mindset right there, Max.
Oh, yeah.
She wasn't just vibing, she was studying. Well, the new R&B artists today, that's a lesson. You have to be a student of the greats to become one.
Oh, exactly, Mello. And Dionne, who was a classically trained music student from the Hart College of Music, well, she treated her career with the same academic rigor that she applied to her studies. In the early 1960s, even as she was starting to land hits, she realized that singing the notes was only 10% of the job. The other 90% was the command of the room. Boy, she had that right. The classroom locations where she would take her yellow pad and sit in the back shadows were the most prestigious venues in the world, places she wasn't yet big enough to headline herself.
Right, Max. And since she was in New York, it was the Persian Room to watch Diane Carroll and Eartha Kitt.
Or the Waldorf Astoria to watch Johnny Mathis and Lena Horne.
The Copacabana to study Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra.
Or Basin Street East to analyze the phrasing of Ella and Sarah. And what she was writing down on that legal pad, you ask? Well, she wasn't writing lyrics, I'll tell you that. She was documenting the architecture of the set. And her notes focused on, like, the walk. How did Lena Horne literally step out onto the stage? What was her posture like? How did she own the air before she even opened her mouth?
Or the patter. What do the artists say between the songs? How do they set the mood or tell the story of the next track so the audience felt connected? How did their clothing enhance the music? Dionne later became legendary for her elegant, high-fashion stage gowns.
Yes, and what about the repertoire? Why did they pick that song to follow this one? She was studying the emotional flow of a live show. What a smart chick. When she finally met Lena Horne years later, Lena was stunned to find out that Dionne had every one of her records, not just the hits, but the bombs too. Dionne had studied the failures just as much as the successes. She was nothing if not focused.
She certainly was, Max. And after Dionne's famous "Don't Make Me Over, Man" outburst, Bert and Hal realized they didn't just have a demo singer, they had a muse.
Which is quite a thing. That's an amazing thing to have.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of just hiring her for one-off jobs, they decided to tie their professional fates together.
It was a huge move, Mello. Bacharach and David formed their own production company. They didn't just write for Dionne, they produced her. They took Dionne to Florence Greenberg at Scepter Records, which we talked about before, another crucial architect move in Scepter, which was an independent, gritty R&B label, Mello, home of the Shirelles, and Sissy Houston. Bringing the uptown sophistication of Bacharach to a downtown soul label, this created friction that gave their music its very unique edge.
It was definitely a moving on up sound they brought, that's for certain, Max. And what made it a triangle marriage was that each side was indispensable and stayed in their lane to perfection.
That's right. There was the music, which was Bert. He wrote the melodies and the complex arrangements. He was notoriously demanding, often making Dionne record dozens and dozens of takes just to get a specific rhythmic phrasing right.
The lyrics, Hal, he wrote the lyrics, mature lyrics. While other 60s songs were about teenage hand-holding, Hal was writing about adult heartbreak, regret, and sophisticated longing, like Walk On By and Anyone Who Had a Heart. Yeah.
And the delivery of Dionne Mello, well, she's the only one who could handle Bert's impossible time signatures, shifting from 4/4 to 7/8 mid-song, and she still made it sound like it was effortless and soulful.
Here, the sound is the star, Max. In a typical marriage, there's a lot of compromise. In a triangle marriage, they compromised for the song. Dionne famously said they became family.
And it's true. The music sounded that way.
Yeah, and boy, did she lean in. She used her voice like a lead horn. That's a lesson for modern creators. Don't be afraid of complexity. Don't simplify your art just to fit a 15-second clip. They spent hours in the studio together, often with Sissy Houston and the family background singers refining the sound until it was bulletproof.
Bet it was. And that Mello is because Bacharach and David were the producers, and they had total control. They didn't have to listen to A&R men or suits. That gave them the architectural freedom to experiment with the French horns, the flugelhorns, and the orchestral swells that R&B had never seen before. Of course, this was before Tom Bell, and of course, this was before the Philly soul sound. Unfortunately, every great drama has a turning point, Mello, and the marriage ended abruptly and acrimoniously in 1973 over a dispute between Bert and Hal during the filming of a movie called Lost Horizon. And there you go, Dionne Warwick is caught in the crossfire of a divorce she didn't cause, and it damn well nearly derails her career.
That's right, Max. In 1973, while Dionne was out on the road and following up on her obligations, Bert Bacharach and Hal David went off to work on the film The Lost Horizon, which turned into a disaster of a musical film.
Yes, it's what they call a legendary Hollywood train wreck. Starting with, guess what, Mello? A creative rift. Boy, like we never heard of that, have we? All right, so in a nutshell, Bert felt the producers were butchering his music in the editing room, and he wanted Hal, his partner, to stand by him and fight the studio. But Hal, ever the quiet professional, decided to stay out of it. And why did we do that?
And of course, around the same time, Max, Bacharach reportedly asked for a bigger share of their royalties.
Bingo.
He wanted a 60-40 split because he felt that he was doing the heavy lifting by producing the sessions while Hal just wrote the lyrics. Of course, Hal refused.
Well, yeah, you think so. Okay, Hal, so I need you to back me here, and I'm going to take 10% from you on top of that. Is that all right with you? I'm sure.
No.
You're right. I'm just hazarding a guess here. Maybe we do know why Hal didn't support Bert, but hey, who are we? So I guess what happened next, Mello, was to be expected. There was an explosion in Bacharach land, and he snapped. He literally walked away from the partnership, famously telling Hal, "I am done."
And then what about Dionne?
Oh,
Collateral damage.
What about
Oh,
Dionne?
yeah, she was collateral damage because now she's the victim. And what a casualty she was because she had just signed a massive $5 million contract with Warner Brothers.
Uh-oh.
And that was 1973. $5 million was a lot of money.
Gotta believe it. And what was it predicated on, though?
And the contract was predicated on one thing.
There
Bacharach and David would provide the songs.
And, well, Mello, when the duo stopped talking, they stopped writing. And Dionne, well, she was left with a massive recording obligation and no architects to design the house. Warner Brothers actually sued Dionne for breach of contract because she couldn't deliver the Bacharach David sound, which she had promised. So get this, y'all. To defend herself, Dionne had to sue Bert and Hal for $5.5 million to force them back into the studio.
Unbelievable as it was, Max, it was a messy divorce that took years to settle.
Oh, my God, yeah.
But eventually they did, but the magic was gone.
Oh, sure, completely gone.
She had spent the mid-70s, or as they were referred to as her lost years, trying to find a new sound, which is why her comeback in 1979 with Arista was so miraculous.
That's true, but she was struggling, boy. She even added an E to the end of her name for a few years after consulting a numerologist, just to try to change her luck. But all it served to do was give her more bad luck, until she changed it back, joking that the E really stood for exhaustion. Even though she achieved a #1 record with Tom Bell and she was working with Holland Dozier Holland, she still felt adrift.
Yeah, that's right, because the #1 was Then Came You with the Spinners.
That's a great song.
Yeah. Huge.
For us, that shows that even the greatest creative unions, though, need clear business structures. So when the architects fight, well, the building or the artist's career can really suffer. So when Bert and Hal fell out, well, Dionne was the one left standing in a half house saying, hey, I'm looking for a contractor.
That's why we always say protect your masters, but also protect your partnerships. A creative marriage is a living thing. You got to nurture the business as much as the beat.
Yep, teamwork makes the dream work, Mello. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Dionne Warwick.
You're listening to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul. Stay with us. Hey, we're back. Now, Max, everyone knows the 60s hits, but Dionne's 70s era is where the real reconstruction happened.
And this is where it gets heavy, Mello. After the Bacharach partnership dissolved, well, she didn't quit. Dionne Warwick was a professional at a crossroads, though. And so to find a new sound, Warner Brothers paired her with the iconic Motown production team of Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, and Eddie Holland. And this resulted in the 1973 album, Just Being Myself. Those tracks, which were recorded at Holland Dozier Holland Sound Studios in Detroit, well, they moved Dionne away from her sophisticated New York pop soul sound toward a grittier Detroit-influenced soul.
Talk about shuffling the deck, Max.
I'm telling you.
Dionne later admitted that she felt somewhat uncomfortable with the project because many of the tracks had been laid down before she even entered the studio. The album was not a major commercial success, which led Warner Brothers to keep searching for the right producer. So basically, her first few albums with Warner Brothers had failed to find the same success. And try as she might, it wasn't happening, Max. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, producer Tom Bell was the king of the Philly soul sound, having revitalized the Spinners after they moved from Motown to Atlantic Records. And it just so happens, Max, that the Spinners and Dionne Warwick had spent the summer of 1973 touring together.
Nice coincidence.
Mm-hmm. The groups shared a deep mutual respect. The Spinners enjoyed the prestige of touring with a superstar, while Dionne appreciated their high-energy showmanship.
And that's right, Mel. And because the Spinners were on Atlantic and Dionne was on Warner and they were sister labels, a collaboration was easy to arrange. And of course, Tom Bell was asked to produce Dionne, and they were so busy. He really initially didn't have time to do a full record. Mm-hmm. But he decided that a duet with the group that she'd just toured with, well, that would be a really perfect gift. So now while Tom Bell produced the stylistics and they shared that smooth orchestral Philly soul sound, it was the Spinners that provided that vocal in Then Came You. And that track featured the group's lead singers Bobby Smith and Philip Wynne trading lines with Dionne, which was badass as hell.
Oh, yeah. Dionne famously didn't like the song at first, Max. She felt it was too pop or bubblegum compared to the sophisticated Bacharach arrangements that she was used to.
Yeah, but Tommy Bell knew better.
All right. Tom Bell, however, was certain that it was a hit. So to settle the argument, Tom tore a $100 bill in half. He gave one half to Dionne and kept the other, telling her, if this song doesn't go to #1, I'll pay you my half. And then if it does, you send your half back.
That's right. And don't you know it, Mello? The song shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the first #1 of Dionne's career. True to her word, she sent her half of the bill back to Tom with an apology note.
Man, that 1974 track, Then Came You with the Spinners.
It was badass.
That was architectural perfection. It's got Philly silk, but Dionne's cool rhythmic precision.
After she linked up with Holland Dozier Holland for the Just Myself album, even the industry was still shifting to disco. She was still trying to find a way to keep the soul sophisticated.
The lesson for us today is resilience. Every artist hits a lost period like she did between 72 and 78, but she used that time to not only pivot, she didn't chase the trends, she waited for the right architecture to build on.
Yes, she proved that a legacy isn't built on one hit. It's built on the ability to rebuild when the old structure falls down and influence the next generation on that string that we keep pulling on.
That's exactly right, Max. During Dionne's slow period, her impact wasn't just on the charts. It was directly inside her own family. While the industry was trying to figure out where Dionne fit in a post-Bacharach world, she was busy being the primary mentor and auntie to a young Whitney Houston.
That's right. And for us and our peers, this is a crucial architect lesson. Even when your own building is under renovation, you could still help someone else lay their foundation. And that person was Dionne's first cousin, Whitney Houston. Dionne's mother, Lee, was the sister of Whitney's mother, Sissy, and we've talked about her from Gladys in episode 6. Anyway, as we know, Sissy sang with Elvis, Aretha, Van Morrison, Dusty Springfield, and so many others. So during those lost years, Dionne was a constant presence in Whitney's life.
And Whitney grew up watching Dionne handle the business, the high-fashion gowns, the television specials, and even lawsuits. Whitney didn't just see the fame, she saw the labor it took.
That's right. And when your teachers are Dionne Warwick and Sissy Houston, who's, as we said, was some architect, well, they were the architects of her technique. And, well, do we really need to say more?
We need to say nothing else.
No.
Actually, Max, we do need to say more, though.
Oh, there you go. You're right.
Dionne taught Whitney about diction and phrasing.
There is that.
If you listen to Whitney's early records, that crystal clear pronunciation of every syllable, that's the Dionne Warwick school of singing.
It's so true, Mello. It really was. Dionne famously warned Whitney early on about the sharks in the business industry, too, because Dionne had just gone through that Collateral Damage period where her producers just walked away, and she was so fierce about Whitney having the right team. So it's really no coincidence that when Dionne signed with Clive Davis at Arista in 1979 and staged a massive comeback, well, guess what? She eventually brought Whitney into that same house. And you know what? Dionne paved the way for the most successful label-artist relationship in history.
And it wasn't just Whitney, Max. During the mid-'70s, Dionne's sophisticated soul became the blueprint for the quiet storm and smooth soul movement.
True indeed, Mello. Both have cited Dionne's 70s work, especially her collaboration with Tom Bell, as the reason they realized that soul could be chic and orchestral rather than just gritty, Mello. She set a standard for black female excellence that refused to be pigeonholed, and she proved that you could be a global pop star without stripping away your gospel-rooted soul.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
That's right. You're listening to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul. Stick around. We are talking Dionne Warwick. Thanks for tuning into Architects of Soul. Our music is waiting for you.
Hey, you're back listening to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul. And just a quick reminder, remember to hit that subscribe button and check us out on YouTube for the full visual experience.
Yes, definitely. If I feel like watching instead of listening, you actually can. So let's talk about the 79 pivot, Arista Records and Clive Davis. And of course, I'll Never Love This Way Again, the ultimate reclamation project. By 1977, Dionne had felt the music industry had really passed her by. Her 5-year run at Warner's, well, it was a commercial disappointment, and she was seriously considering retirement.
Right, Max. And the Arista era happened because of a chance encounter and Clive Davis's legendary ear for a comeback.
And it took a talk show, which is another memory of mine in a past life. So the spark happened in 77 when Dionne and Clive Davis were both guests on the same television talk show at the same time. And Dionne's contract with Warner Brothers was getting ready to expire. And turns out, well, Clive was a massive fan of her earlier work with Bacharach, and he reportedly told her point blank, and I love this, he said, "You're being produced poorly, and I could return you to the top of the charts if you just trust me."
As we've said on this show before, Clive Davis is no joke back then or now.
No, sir.
So he didn't just guess. He had been studying her career. He had told her that he had every recording she'd ever made and knew exactly what was missing: the marriage of a sophisticated voice with the right contemporary pop production.
Yes, Mello. And once she signed to Arista in 1979, Clive made a very bold move. He paired Dionne with his golden child, Barry Manilow, as her producer. And Dionne was famously hesitant, and who could blame her? She was a Bacharach singer and wasn't sure Manilow's high drama pop ballad style was the right fit for her cool, restrained delivery. But Clive, man, he pushed them together and they found a middle ground. Mello brought in the song I'll Never Love This Way Again, which had actually been recorded by others. That included Richard Kerr and even Cheryl Ladd.
Who knew?
But yeah, right. But it didn't become a hit, obviously.
Right. Well, Max, the collaboration was explosive. The 1979 album, simply titled Dionne, became her first ever platinum-selling album. It produced two massive top 10 hits, I'll Never Love This Way Again and Deja Vu, which was written by Isaac Hayes for Dionne.
Badass song.
Yeah. And Dionne made history in 1980 by becoming the first female artist to win both the Best Female Pop Vocal Performance and Best Female R&B Vocal Performance in the same year.
Yeah, Clive Davis's vision didn't just save her career. It launched a 15-year partnership at Arista that eventually led to Heartbreaker. So after the success of her 79 comeback, Clive wanted to keep the momentum going. So he paired Dionne with the biggest hit-making machine of the early 80s, the Bee Gees. So the story of Heartbreaker is really a repeat of the Then Came You pattern. You know, Dionne initially hated the song, but a producer's conviction and a little bit of begging turned it into a global smash. Who knew?
Who knew? And in 1982, the Bee Gees were in a transition phase. Their own superstardom as a group had cooled in the States anyway after the disco backlash. But Barry Gibb had just proven he was a master producer for others by revitalizing Barbra Streisand's pop career with the Guilty album in 1980. Clive Davis approached Barry Gibb specifically to write and produce for Dionne. Interestingly, some accounts say that it was actually Andy Gibb who first suggested Dionne's name to Clive while they were looking for a list of Arista artists.
So off goes Dionne, traveling to the Bee Gees' home turf, Middle Ear Studios in Miami, to record. Barry Gibb, along with his production team of Albie Galutin and Carl Richardson, the Gibb-Galutin-Richardson team, as they called it, who crafted a sound, well, it really blended Dionne's sophisticated delivery with the Gibb brothers' trademark melodic structure and heavy acoustic guitars. Now, when Barry Gibb played the demo of Heartbreaker for Dionne, well, she was not impressed.
No, Max, she was not. She found the song to be whiny and not her style.
This is her.
Yeah, she reportedly told Barry, I don't like the song. I don't want to record it. Well, Barry and Morris Gibb practically begged her to trust them, Max.
Familiar string.
Right. Barry told her, I promise you it's a hit. Just sing it.
Right. So Dionne eventually agreed, but she famously quipped later, I swear, I cried all the way to the bank. She realized even if it wasn't her personal favorite, the public loved it. And you know how that is. Mello, if you listen closely to the chorus of Heartbreaker, you can hear Barry Gibb's distinct high harmony vocal.
Morris Gibb later noted that they almost kept the song for themselves because they liked it so much, saying, I cried my eyes out after we wrote it. I thought, we should be doing this one.
Yeah, the Bee Gees. Okay.
Barry's presence on the track is so strong, though, that it almost feels like a duet, really. And that, of course, helped bridge the gap between Dionne's R&B pop fan base and the massive global audience of the Bee Gees.
And the result, Mello, well, hard to believe, but the song became one of the biggest hits of Dionne's career, reaching number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. It was a massive international success, also reaching number 2 in the UK. And it proved that Dionne wasn't just a Bacharach singer. She was a chameleon who could conquer any era with the right collaborator.
That's right. She became the first female artist, like we said earlier, to win both the pop and R&B Grammys in the same year. But think about that impact, Max. She broke the urban box that the industry tries to put us in. And we know all about that.
We sure do. And for artists listening right now, Dionne's impact was showing that your voice can live in two worlds. You don't have to choose between soulful and successful. And this leads us to the return of the triangle, but with a new corner.
True indeed, Max. After the messy divorce in 1973 and the subsequent lawsuits, Dionne, Bert, and Hal didn't speak for nearly 10 years. Finally, in 1985, the ice broke when Burt Bacharach reached out to Dionne.
That's right, Mello. He and his new songwriting partner, the new corner of the triangle, and his then wife, Carol Bayer Sager, had written a song originally for the film Night Shift and was recorded by Rod Stewart. But, man, they felt the song had a much bigger purpose and wanted Dionne's Velvet Touch to lead a charity version for the benefit AMFAR, which is the Foundation for AIDS Research, at a pivotal time.
Absolutely. The reunion wasn't just about a hit song either, Max. It was a public healing. Dionne agreed to the session immediately, and she famously said, life is too short to hold on to yesterday's disagreements when today needs our help.
That's right, and they had a new framework, Mello. Burt Bacharach was Bacharach at the piano, but this time, the triangle expanded. To make it a true powerhouse of soul, well, they brought in Stevie Wonder and Gladys Knight, along with Elton John, and they recorded That's What Friends Are For. And the song became a global phenomenon, but more importantly, it was the ultimate humanitarian anthem.
And the impact cannot be overstated, Max. It raised over $3 million for AIDS research at a time when the disease was heavily stigmatized and the government was largely silent.
And a whole lot of people were dying. And herein lies the architect lesson. Music isn't just about the vibe. It's about impact. Dionne used her restored architecture to save lives.
And she used that success for the collective. Now, that's using your platform for more than just a check.
Oh, certainly is, Mello. Dionne Warwick was an architect of culture, not just songs. She refused to play for segregated audiences early on. She knew her worth. In today's world, where we're fighting for streaming pennies, man, we got to remember her dignity, her vulnerability, and her class.
She was and still is indeed a class act, Max. We're going to take a short pause for the cause.
That's right, Mello, and then we're going to come back and put a bow on the architect that is Dionne Warwick.
You're listening to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul, and we'll be right back.
Stick around. Hey, welcome back to Architects of Soul. So, Mello, we've looked at the 60s elegance, the 70s soul searching, and the 80s dominance, as Dionne Warwick is the bridge that allowed artists like Whitney, Maxwell, and her to exist.
She was the master engineer of sophisticated soul, Max, proving that precision is just as powerful as passion. Her impact was redefining the black female artist as a global multi-genre entity who could command the pop charts without sacrificing her gospel-rooted dignity. By treating her career as a classroom and her voice as a lead instrument, she built a bridge of elegance that allowed future icons to walk out of the R&B box and into the world's most prestigious room.
Yes, indeed, Mello. Dionne Warwick normalized complex musicality in popular soul, making impossible rhythms sound effortless. And through her legal pad method, well, she turned stage presence into a documented science for every artist who followed. She didn't just sing for herself. She used her own blueprint to insulate and mentor the next generation, like Whitney, ensuring that the House of Soul will stand for decades.
That's so true, Max. Dionne Warwick taught us that your vibe is nothing without your vocation. Study the greats, take the notes, and stand your ground when someone tries to make you over. Stay true to who you are and what you're about.
That's right, and pass that shit down for the next generation, Soul Fam. So walk your path, put the work in, and most importantly, believe in yourself. For if you do not, then no one will ever believe in you. And as always, we want to close with our final thought and our hope for all of us, our art, our craft, and our creations.
Keep that soul fire burning, protect your sound, nurture your creativity, own your voice, and remember the lessons from the giants who came before.
And yes, protect your masters and seek out wise mentors who can guide you on your journey. And until next we meet,
peace and soul, y'all.